Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, Baruch atah. It's so fun. I love this day. I've been so excited. It's so excited about this day. I want to first of all put out there, please everyone say a little prayer for Brenda. Jeff is struggling and she had to run him to the emergency room this morning. So I know Linda, you're close by. If there's any support in that area, it literally just happened within this hour. So I am Dr. Robin jumps right in and she's like, I'll help. So we love her. Thank you for jumping in. And Brenda sends her love. She was so excited to be here, but of course our number one duty is to our family. So everyone, big prayers to her. We love her so much. You guys, you know what? You're going to recognize mentioned Robin in an email I sent out this week. So I thought we just hit that for a minute, Robin, because it's your genius. Before we jump into this week's Parsha. But if you didn't get the email, it's probably because it's in your spam or you unsubscribed from us. But you should have a email either from, I think it's either from Charlie at the Rooted Cafe or info at the Rooted Cafe. And it was one of my emails this week said, I'm having fun writing these, by the way. It said, would Yeshua eat at your house? And I thought, I am surprised, by the way, I did not get more emails of people like, what? I was waiting and I almost didn't hit the send button. But Robin, can you just hop in on that? So like, if you're feeling lost, I'm just going to encourage you to go look in your email. If you're in the portion, you should have gotten it because we do have your email address and I send it out to everyone. So do you want to jump in on that? Would Jesus eat it? Jesus eat at your house? Would he eat at your house?
Yes. Now he would eat at mine. What's funny about that is I knew, I said, oh, she's going to get some pushback and some kind of cool stuff too. Because what you're saying is not, would Yeshua come into your home and teach you and you can sit at his feet and he would stroke your hair and say, hey, we're going to figure this out together. Would he actually consume what's on a pork chop that we hand to him? No, right? Does not mean he rejects us. But would he reject that? Yes, right? So I wrote these 3 books that all go together. It's a trilogy. And what it is just basically meant to address the main arguments against the dietary law from an attachment perspective of common sense, love, parenting, and how that might go, what that might look like through that lens. So it's Peter's Vision, Beacon or Bacon. And I'm not trying to sell you books. I'm just telling you that's a resource. They're super cheap. I don't make money on these books.
They're like $4 and $5, you guys. I'm serious.
Whatever it costs to make it.
Printed. Yeah, that's what she sells them for. Yeah.
And so it's like, Peter's Vision, Beacon or Bacon, and that addresses that vision. And then I have one that's called Colossal Controversies about don't judge in food or drink or whatever. We talk about that. We go into depth and you learn a lot more than just that, but that's the central theme. And then I have this one, First Century Words Spoken to 21st Century Saints, our believers. And that, and what these 3 books is they cover all the questions, like, but aren't we supposed to be thankful and eat what's before us, or all is lawful, or whatever, all of these things that kind of, it's like apologetics from a loving perspective of how this is an identity issue. This is a part about who are we in terms of that family, what last name do we have? So it's more like that than like you're condemned and you're not saved or anything like that. You know what I mean? And so anyway, that was where but yeah, what would Yeshua eat? What would he eat? Now he would be with us, but would he eat a blue dart frog that would kill him in 10 seconds? Because that's an unclean thing. No, when you serve him a blue dart frog, he won't eat that. So there you go.
Yeah, and it sounds like a silly thing, but in part of the email, when I was looking, I was thinking, we talk about he stands at the door and knocks, and we don't realize he's standing at the door knocking, and then he what a beautiful thing that was, because an Orthodox Jew wouldn't stand at your door knocking. I remember when I was a little girl, and I had a little girl that lived down the street, and I couldn't play inside her house. I wasn't allowed to come into her home because I was goyim, and she wasn't allowed. She could play outside with me sometimes, but I remember that first experience of feeling like I was dirty, like I wasn't, because I didn't know what that meant, and my mom didn't have the tools to be able to explain that to me. But I remember I was not allowed into her home because they did. And remember, we've gone through and we'll go through it again. I recommend you go back and watch some of our portions when we go deep into like what's clean and unclean. It doesn't mean something that's filthy. It means fit for service. What is something that is fit for service? So we talk about, and I love when we go through the corbanots, because if we think about what you're going to sit at your table and eat, that's the same things we would have brought to the altar, the same things. He's like, I want to sit and I want to eat with you. It was another picture of him saying, I'm at the door, I'm waiting for you to sit with me and eat with me. And it's a beautiful invitation. But I thought, I got an email from Robin right away. She's like, hey, let's do something about this. Let's teach this deeper. And I'm like, I'm in, So I was like, I haven't gotten back to her yet, but we got to do this. And Robin is one of our board members in the Rooted Cafe, and this is all new coming about over here. So we're blessed, and we're excited to see what this new year brings for us. But this section, Chayei Sarah, Sarah. Hey, guess she got a whole parsha named after her. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Right. We're in Genesis 23:1 through 25:18. You're going to see us jump over to John 4. I'm going to jump over there just at the end. We're going to talk about this whole well business. And it's interesting. Of course, when I looked over to see, what's the parsha for the gospel? What part do we want to hit? It was already in my notes to talk about Jacob's well and the woman at the well, because, we're going to talk about them being at a well. There's a lot of well business happening in here. But I thought it was pretty cool that this whole parsha is named after her. And some of you that are brand new, I just want to say, when you hear us talking about learning from this Hebraic perspective, I want you to think of it this way. Any of you guys watch the cooking channel? Like, put on there, like, put it in Facebook right now if you're Facebook. And hello, everyone watching later on the replays. We love you, everyone from all over. Such a great community. We women all over. I know that there's some women in England. They're looking for some other women in the United Kingdom who would join up with them. I saw that on Facebook. Hello to the women over in, I mentioned Georgia because it's so fun to me that we have the country of Georgia. We have someone in there. We have women in Asia, all over, Australia, obviously South Africa, here, just women everywhere. So we want you guys to know, hi, welcome. But why do we study from a Hebraic perspective? Because if you watch the cooking channel, and you're looking, Robin, are you a cooking channel watcher? Do you watch any food shows?
Absolutely.
So you're like watching this, even if you're watching let's just use food, for example, and you're watching this show and you're like, oh my goodness, this looks amazing. But you don't get the 3 dimensions. You're like watching someone else enjoy, and you can tell they're like smelling it, they're touching it, they have this full experience with this food. And then they get to enjoy it. And then the next show comes on. It's like that when you're studying. The only way that you really get it personally and you get that full dimension is if you get in and make the recipe, right? If you're like, well, I got to make that now. So you go, you buy the ingredients. There's a lot more to it than just sitting and watching. It takes some work. So you got to go to the store. You got to make a list. Then you got to go to the store, and then you got to buy the stuff, and you got to come home and prepare it. And then, then you got to serve it. And then you cook it, then you eat it. There's a process. That's kind of like, right? Would you agree, Robin? That's kind of how we are with studying this Hebraic perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting and listening to someone teach you stuff like I did most of my life, you actually have to, there's a little work to get that dimensionality, to taste and see, right?
Yes, absolutely. And in the portion, it actually talks about this covenant meal that they have, before he'll even eat a covenant meal. He's like, here's why I'm here. Anyway, we'll get there. But yeah, but food is the universal language, really more than math, because everyone has to have food to survive. Everybody speaks food. And so what a great way for the Father to remind us of our family identity. And at the buffet 3 times a day, you're reminded who Daddy is. It's not so much what you can and can't eat, it's who are you. Mm-hmm. And so when we kind of take it like this big heavenly hug and embrace and protection rather than a deprivation, right? Yeah, because the unclean things are not just pork. It's also, like I said, the scorpions and the blue dart frogs and the puffer fish. You die in 5 minutes. So protection, right? But when that's identity, your daddy shows up, and it's not like we're deprived. We are extravagantly sustained. and
Amen.
identity. So this is a really nice thing. And but culture says these are the delicacies of the king's food. Which
Mm.
king, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
which king? Yeah, which king are you eating? Whose food are you eating? Right? Are we gonna be like Daniel? And if we can say my daughter used to say, if I can say no to pepperoni pizza, I can say no to a lot of things
yeah,
because
exactly.
who I am. And part of your even your shopping experience becomes about reading labels. Like now I'm like reading labels for certain red dyes because if it has these red dyes, they're made out of these little beetle cockroach things. But anyways, I digress. But in our study, when we're looking at studying this parsha, and you're like, well, instead of just sitting listening to us, I want to encourage you guys to jump in, instead of just sitting and watching the Food Network, jump in and go buy the ingredients. Jump in and look at what is this saying? What does this word mean? Go read some commentaries. You hear us. I mean, Rabbi Foreman, if you think it's Aleph Beta, they may charge $10 a month. I don't even know, but it's loaded with information. He has like Genesis packed full of like the whole life of every single patriarch. He goes deep into it. It might be more. You'll read it, you'll be like, I have no clue what he just said. But then the next time you read it, you understand 3 words. It's kind of like if you've tried to make a French sauce, probably didn't turn out the first few times you made it, right? It requires a discipline to get in and so you experience this full dimensionality instead of just watching it on TV. You're jumping in and you're tasting and seeing that this word is good. You're dividing some words up and you're seeing, talking to some friends, and we call it midrashing, right? Well, I wonder if this means this. And that's weird for me, Robin, to question. And we've started doing it a lot on the after party. We started kind of midrashing now. I wonder if this means this. I get to question some things, and that's actually a Hebraic perspective, right? To get in when you're looking at this, to actually question.
Right, exactly. Because the Hebrews were the ones that crossed over, and that's what that means, right? So they crossed over from Egypt, where they were immersed in a culture that enslaved them. And then they were free, but they crossed over, but they, like I said, you could take them out of Egypt, but it took a while to get the Egypt out of them. And we're the same way, right? So the Egypt had a costume and a language and a food profile that we are now extracted from, and we have to relearn everything. We're in our wilderness relearning how to eat, how to worship, how to read. Like if we're reading something in the Torah and it seems to, or maybe in the Brit Hadashah, we're reading something and it seems to contradict something in the Torah, we stop, because a lot of it's okayly translated, but a lot of it isn't, right? So we stop and we say, well, that doesn't make sense. Let's see if there's any word choices where they had a translational bias, and let me go back. And then you say, oh, that isn't even what that word probably means at all, because it matches this when you select this definition of that word, this translation. Then you put it together seamlessly.
So good. So good. And it takes discipline, you guys, especially if you're new to this. Don't be so hard on yourself, and we do have on there free. I'm going to be working on I redid our webpage, and it just got rid of the whole store that we had back there. So I'm going to be working on that when we're done today and try to get that back. At least some of the things we have in there that were free, like we have the how to study the Bible, and we go through the scary word called hermeneutics, and we explain like what that means and how you study step by step and how to use the Blue Letter Bible. Just get started, just jump in. Every year you'll get better at it. And I kind of want to encourage you before we jump in today, because a lot of times we're like, how did you guys get that out of that? Right. I ask a lot of questions now. I ask a lot more questions, like, this doesn't make sense, so why is that in there? And then I just kind of jump from there.
And it's a treasure hunt, because when you find, oh, that's what that means, you're like all excited all over again about Leviticus 4, where you were like, I thought I had already had all the excitement I was going to get out of Leviticus 4, but I am excited again. It's like you recycle your excitement, like, oh, wow,
Yeah. I love it. We're going to see in this. Okay. So just a review, we see that in this Parsha, it's about Sarah, and it's kind of the replacement of Sarah, right? We're seeing Sarah's matriarchal position is going to be replaced. And we see that because we'll see Isaac actually take his new bride into his mother's tent, which is saying, okay, she's now the queen. Now she's queen since my mother passed. We're going to talk about this buying a cave. Why is that even important that he pushed about buying this cave? The whole process of getting a new wife for Isaac. What else? What else did I write down? Scrolling through my stuff. falling off camels. and we're going to end up at the woman at the well. But so Sarah passes away. She dies. She reaches her vanishing point, and Abraham goes to get her a field, and it's that cave. He goes to he goes to buy the cave to bury her in, the cave at Machpelah. Did you go there when you were in Israel?
Yes.
You want to give us some insights on that before
Yes. Now, the time that I went with I believe a tour, and I was 5 a.m. jet lag, and that day is a blur. So I can't authentically say I remember all the details of that. They told me I was there, and I was, but I'll let you move on. I was like, is that the thing with the tall thing with the thing that was wide and the person yelled at us? And they're like, no, that was the other thing. I'm like, okay, so I don't know, but that's
one of the things I know that Halisa teaches. It's funny, she was just popping in on me. One of the things she teaches about this cave is that it is the sages say that is actually the entrance to the Garden of Eden, and that's why he wanted that specific cave so bad, because it is thought to be one of the entrances to the garden, and he wanted to be as close to the garden as possible, and he wanted to make sure he paid for. I mean, we see that Ephraim is like, no, take the field, take the cave, take everything. Like, you're like the prince of this area, like take it all. And Abraham's like, no, I'm going to pay for this. And there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of oral Torah and midrashing that goes on about this. One is that because it was this cave that was the opening to the Garden of Eden, and I can imagine things that I pay for, he now had, it was his, like he paid for it. It would have been like the ancient Near East. It would have been like, nothing can revoke this. It's not like, oh, you gave me a gift, thanks. And then now you can be like, you can take it back if, people can forget, they forget who owns it. And now someone else uses it. And no, this is Abraham's. He paid for it. It's his, it's done. Right.
Yes. And that's very symbolic, I think, from what I do remember when I was standing there, but also that since Sarah is very symbolic, highly symbolic of the spirit, because Abraham, so Jewish people, like they would say, I'm the daughter of Abraham and Sarah. That's like the identity they give you, but that the mother, the spirit, can never be revoked. And so that she's connected to the land, right? So the land is about inheritance. It's about birthright. It's about identity. It always goes back to identity. No one can revoke who your mother is and where she rests. And she rests in the land that you inherit. That's your birthright. She's there. No one can take that away. We paid for it free and clear, debt free, at forever.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, interesting. I love it. So she's buried, and now we'll see later on, everyone except for Rachel is actually not buried there. We'll see. We'll hit that later on. Leah is buried there. We'll see Rebecca is buried there. You'll see Joseph saying, I want my bones brought back to be buried there. This is something in our culture we don't understand, to have all of our bones. If you've gone to Israel, you'll see they'll put the bones in little boxes, and then they can all sit them inside a family like cave.
Yes.
And they all sit around, and your family would all be like having a family reunion, and your bones would be in the cave, and that's what they do. So this would be really symbolic of that as well. And then we see Abraham saying, well, time to get Isaac a wife. Right. And I think this is one of my favorite stories. Do you have any insights on this? I mean, because we see, this is such a great story.
I know. Yeah. I love this story. I actually do a more detailed account. I did a show on lambnetwork.tv, and we discussed this very particular thing about how this it was accomplished from Eliezer and what he did. And anyway, it goes into, but I really love when you read this story very specifically, the text goes out of its way, I think, to show the humility of Eliezer, and and the way he finds Rebecca, right? The way he puts a fleece out, of, okay, here's how I'll know, because he did have faith in the Father, but not all the faith in the world in his own judgment, which is, I think, once we can get there and realize we don't know what we thought we know, we are so much smarter.
Yeah.
And, right. We learn how to listen. And, so when he goes to find her, and he says, she'll offer me water and water the camels. And she'll give me water when he requests. So he requests water. She says yes, and by the way, let me water your camels, which is a huge job to water camels, right? It's
Huge.
like, think of how many times she would have to go back with a thing on her shoulder, her water on her shoulder, to water all these camels. And what I love about this story, there's a couple of things. I just love this whole story. I'm with you. This story is so meaty, and people just glaze over it because they think, let's get to the part where he takes her in the tent and then we move on from there. But really,
Yeah.
how she was.
Let's get to the sons. Let's get to the sons. And we want to see Esau and Jacob. Let's see that happening and all the drama. But okay, yeah, he got a wife. And it's very short, right? I mean, we just passed through this quick. And I think that it's important to get to know who Rachel is before we get to her, and why is she pushing for this. I mean, both of these sons are her sons. It's not like Sarah and Hagar with Ishmael and Isaac. We're talking about this girl has twins, and she's favoring one for a reason. We have to know who she is and know her heart, instead of thinking that she's, oh, well, she's Laban's sister. So of course she's Laban's sister. So she's learned how to be sketchy. Like, no, that's not. We got to get to know who she is. So I love this. Let's talk about this servant. So the servant has been with his family for a long time. And last week we really got into the hospitality and what a big deal that was. That's how, like, Abraham ran and ran to go get the things, and because hospitality in the Middle East it's a huge thing. In this family, one of the ways we show the heart of God is through our hospitality. And again, I recommend watching. Last week was one of my favorites, I will say, is my favorite parshas that we talked about. Just really talking about Sarah and how she's sitting back and she's giggling. And do we do that? Do we sit back? And when he said, where is Sarah? It's the same words that he used to ask Adam and Eve, where are you? When he was asking that, there's a lot going on there. But this hospitality is a wave of the heart of God, as we offer hospitality. It's a big thing. And it's also a gift. Many of you guys have this gift and loving it. But here's this servant who's like, I know who they are. And he's like, okay, so whatever you do, if she doesn't come back with you, do not bring my son with you. Don't bring him there. And do you have any thoughts on that? Like, why was he so specific and saying, don't take my son to this land to be with his family? Because we left. I took my family out of that. And I mean, why not? Why not? Can't he just go get a wife and stay?
I personally think that's an example of come out from among them and be separate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go into your cesspool to get you, but I will send the Spirit to bring you out of the cesspool into the land you'll get now, right? Mm-hmm. So, but she was still related. She was part of the kin. So part of the family, that's us, right? Being drawn out from the dispersion into the land of our inheritance. So I think that's metaphorically showing us, I don't go to you. I don't get in. I'm not going to you except to reach out a messenger to send you back, to bring you back. Right. So that's kind of how I see that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that, because we're going to see, we've seen when they brought Egypt with him, Hagar was bringing Egypt into the mix, and then you're always dealing with Egypt, right? So if we're going to see Jacob go into and stay there, right? He goes and stays, and we'll see next time, the next week, we'll see what happens when you go to the place and you stay there instead of Jacob Isaac didn't say the same thing to his son Jacob before he took off. Like, hey, wait, if you're going to go, don't stay there. Let someone else go get the wives and bring them back to you. And look, it ended up entrapping him. And how much of Laban's, how much do you soak up when you're of the world, not just in it, right? And we're called to be in it and not of it.
Exactly, because when her son goes, he's trapped. Exactly, he is stuck, but he's stuck by choice because he still wants to keep getting Rachel, but he had to endure. Yeah. So that was right. It's like, and we heard about Lot getting out. Get out. Pick your place. What does Ruth say? I'll be buried I'll die with you where you die. Yeah. It's all about coming out from what you were before into that fresh, clean meadow and just run and eat the flowers and meet all the sheep there. It's like that message. that I'm going to send a lead out and they're going to come and they're going to bring you home. But it's going to be by choice, because we get into where we get here. It's like, what I love here is that okay, so this is kind of controversial to some people. It, you know, it says it's about putting the hand on the thigh. So Abraham was blessed. He was old, which really means he was smart and wise. He had taken his punches, right? And he says to his servant, who is the oldest of his household, so he found the wisest, right, who had charge of all, and he says, put your hand under my thigh. So there's two ways to look at that. It could be that's where the tzitzit are, and this is a reminder that we're in covenant to commandments that keep us safe and bond us together, and that's that cord that doesn't break. And some people think it's putting his hand now near, that's symbolic for near the circumcision, which would be, you know, that sounds bizarre, but.
And it's not sexual. And I know that this is, right. I mean, I have it, my next thing too. It is a full Hebrew idiom. It's, and you guys go, you know, go listen, if you're in the membership, go in there and go through Gail's classes on idioms. I mean, the whole word is full of these idioms, and it really is. It's something we don't understand. It's not sexual.
Right.
They would put their hands, I mean, it's not that they would put their hands on their genitals, because it's saying.
Because that's a covenant.
That's a covenant.
Is the blood covenant circle that the seed passes through. That's that declaration of this covenant is offered to everybody, no matter what. This covenant is for everybody, no matter what. All the seed that passes through here and anything that comes through that is right. So that's just a message of love. But he's showing this is a covenant thing. Mm-hmm. And so he's saying, you know, we're going to keep this. We're in covenant. So he's like inviting him into that expression, so that I may make you swear by the Lord of heaven and earth that you will not take a wife for my son from these people right here that have infiltrated our beautiful land here. And so you go to my kindred and you're going to draw her out of them. Right. Mm. And so and then he says, but perhaps the woman won't be willing to even follow me. Like, then do I come and take your son back? And Abraham says, see that you don't take him there. The top goal is that Isaac not go back. The secondary goal is bring this wife to us. So he's making it very clear that we don't go backwards. We only go forwards. Okay. Mm-hmm. We remain in the land of our birthright, and that's our priority. But then he says, the Lord God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from my land, the land of my kindred. So the God who took me out of everything and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring, I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son there. So he's like, don't bring him there. This is a given. Mm-hmm. This is going to work, right? Am I going on too fast?
No, it's perfect. Because I mean, he's just like, I've been thinking about Lot's wife. Don't look back. Like, he would have known that very clearly. Like, we need to stay out of this. Just keep him out of there. And if this woman isn't willing to go with you, then you're free of this oath. Like, I'm going to release you from this oath. You know, some people have thought that he's saying, I'm going to release you from being a servant. So that's why he made it so hard to find the wife, because maybe then he wouldn't find one, and then he would get released of being a servant. I don't think that's it. I think if we're talking about this oath that he made with him when he put his hands on his leg, on his thigh, the high upper thigh, and not so thigh. And I believe that he said, I'm going to release you from this oath, because you can only do what you can do.
Right. Because he's saying, I'm releasing you from this mission.
Yes.
If the other person isn't complicit with the righteous flow of the spirit, you're released from trying to drag them and hog tie them.
Right. Yeah,
so
exactly.
This is, you know, you're still in covenant with me, but you're released from this mission. And, but then he says, but if the woman is not willing to follow you, you'll be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So he very clearly 3 times. So whenever there's 3, it's resurrection. It means the life is in the remaining in the birthright, right? Which is what Esau despised, the birthright. He didn't care about it. He was apathetic. So it says, So the servant after this conversation, he puts his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter, that he would follow this agreement. So he takes the 10 camels, which a lot of people think represent the dispersion, the lost tribes. A lot of people do believe that anytime there's 10 camels, it represents this grace message to the world. The camels are coming for you, you dispersed people. There's nobody left out. You know what I mean? So some people can go there with that. So he says, he takes the 10 camels and he departs, and he takes all kinds of gifts from his master, because you don't go empty handed. No, right? No. So we don't leave a Bible tract on the table instead of a tip when we eat at the restaurant. We give it a nice tip and say, God loves you, right? It's not instead of. Okay. And so then it says, and now it's really interesting. I love this. He goes to Mesopotamia, the city of Nahor, and he makes the camels kneel down beside the city by the well of water at the time of evening. It's very specific. The text is going out of its way to be like, it's the evening. So that day is ending and a new day is beginning. Right. And he says they were kneeling down at the time when the women would go out to draw water, because it was cooler in the day. So this brings you back to the cool of the day, which also means by the Spirit. So when God walked in the garden in the cool of the day, that actually means was in the Spirit. Right. So that's another idiom there, but in evening, it kind of reminds you of the cool of the day. This is a spiritual event that is happening at a well. And whenever there's the well, of course, what is that? That's the dispersed ones, the lost sheep. And so he says, to draw water. Okay. And, O Lord God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. So he's like, show me success and provide for my master, because he really loves his master. He submits to the Spirit. That's kind of the idea. This is the Spirit submitting that to God, the Spirit and God, right? God, that is the breath of God. Right. And then he says, and I love this here. It's like, he says, behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. He's telling the father this. The father knows this, right? Helicopter view, omnipresent, right? Yeah. But he's processing this out loud. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink. So that's interesting. Let down your jar. This water, the living water, is Yeshua, right? So take it off your high shoulder and put it down to my level and let me have a drink. You know what I mean? So we're carrying it on our shoulder, and sometimes you have to stop, let the jar down, and give someone a good drink. And to me, that's another metaphor.
I agree. Stopping. I heard, if you guys know about this cistern, we have a visual that it's like a well, like, you see like Hansel and Gretel at the well, and they're like rolling their little thing. And this is like a well, like it's a cistern. Like they would have had like she said, you should have put this on her shoulders. She would have had to walk down steps, got water, walked back up steps, probably like 100 times. So I know that many of you have had this reinforced to you over the years, but I think sometimes we don't like sit on that, like sit in what that meant. I mean, literally she carried we're told, like, if your neighbor's ox is in a ditch, you're supposed to help them pull it out, and how we're supposed to be hospitable. And I'm thinking, nowadays I feel like we're just not like this anymore, Robin. I don't think I would have been picked to be alive, because I would have been like, hey, I might have been like, hey, you want me to get you some water? But I wouldn't have been like, and all your camels, knowing that I would have been there all night long.
Okay, so let me share this with you, because I want to comfort you. I bet you would, because culturally that sounds bizarre to us to do jar by jar by jar. We can't even think about that. You know why? We have the tap. But if you never knew what a tap was, that is your normal culture. And that wouldn't be out of the realm of like, yeah, I'll do that. That's nothing to them, even though it was a big, huge job. But grace to you, my friend. I bet you would.
Well, thank you. I received that. Okay, I received it.
Yeah.
And
So,
you know what I got on this is that, here's this, while this is all going on and he threw all this fleece out there, which recently I've put a fleece out on a couple things. And it made me laugh when I was reading this. So I was thinking, oh my goodness, it says, and it jumped. This is one of the things that jumped off the page for me this week. He kept silent and observed her. And we've seen this earlier where we're talking about watching, looking, seeing, and we're going to see it later. We're going to see Isaac, his eyes are going to be lifted. We're going to see Rachel's eyes are lifted. We're going to see this happen, but he sits back and watches. He doesn't interfere to try to make it happen. Robin, I am an interferer. There was a season when my husband and I were separated, and the Lord told me to leave him alone and not say a word, to sit back. Now, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't. And I wanted to be like, all I kept hearing is that one song, say something, I'm giving up on you. Like, I just wanted I was all pitiful because he wasn't like reaching out. And the Father just kept saying, stop it. You're just pray. And I knew that I couldn't interfere. I had to sit back and watch. How many of you felt that with your children? You've put something out there and you have to sit back and watch. How about something going on with your provision right now? Many of you being challenged with provision. I put a fleece out there with a job right now that I had to interview. I want to jump in and do all these things to make it happen. Women, most of us are doers, but he sat back and watched. How hard was that for him to not want to help?
So
especially at number 90 when she's shaking because she's so tired.
And so he was proving her out. How far will you go? Who are you, right? Are you the person that will invest? Because what she does is she invests in the animals that will carry her to her destiny. Mm-hmm. She's watering her own chariot and doesn't even know it. But does she know it?
Oh my God, that is good. She was watering her own chariot. Everybody stop for a minute. Let that sink in. She doesn't even realize that she's watering. Oh my God, I have chills right now. She was watering her own chariot. Because later these same camels she's getting them ready to take them back.
Yes. And so she was in that place of discernment and I need to do this. Have you ever, and think of summits you've done or things you've done and think of how tired you were. Charlie, you had to stay up late, deal with computer glitches. Things went wrong. One of your kids was sick and you had a dog throwing up and you did it. I bet you would have done it too. Because if I asked her, hey, would you sit in front of it? Could you do all the things Charlie did? She might be like, boy, I might miss my calling because that sounds really crazy. But when this is a culture battle. We have to remember not to be so hard on ourselves. And I don't say that because people think, oh, I'm too grace oriented, but I also want us to understand the culture difference. But she was investing in her future. So you're investing in your destiny. You're getting tired. You're getting exhausted. You're doing your job. She was doing hers. And so he sat and watched to see if she would actually if she was going to water her own destiny with the well that you'll never thirst again. And she did it. So when those camels were completely watered by this particular person, that was her caravan. That was all for her wedding, all for her future, all for your future, right? He was sat and watched and said, okay, will she do this? Do I have to guilt her? Do I have to prompt her? Because if I do, she won't make it. You know what I mean? So he was silently watching, and like you are with your husband, like if I interfere, there's going to be a process he's going to miss. That's going to be really an authentic returning, right? Good for you. That
like is a butterfly. We can't interfere with the butterfly process, right? I think Debbie, you're on here. I see your little face. You'd sent out an email showing that great picture of the girl inside the little cocoon, like the butterfly. Like we see some people struggling and we want to jump in and help, but we can't, because you can't help that little butterfly out or they'll be weak and they'll die and they won't be able to fly. But there's a lot of times when we're looking and we're like, Father, give me the strength, right? To be able to stand back and not interfere, to watch, to see who you are. And you're going to need you're going to need, I need to know. Sometimes we're so quick. We're such a microwave society. We're so quick to jump in. And it says in verse 21, it says, it was to make sure Adonai was making his way successful. That's the reason that he stepped back. He said he didn't
Yeah.
step in to help. He stepped back. It says, because to make sure that Adonai's way was successful. He knows this family probably better than anyone. He knows the role this woman is going to have to step into. He knows she's going to have to lead nations.
Yeah.
He knows the promises that have been spoken over this family, not just the hospitality that will be required of this family, but he knows, I mean, he just knows the weight of what she's going to be required to do. And it couldn't just be some lollygaggy girls giggly coming out going, oh, you want some water? Here you go. That's like anybody. But
Yeah.
who's going to say, I'll water all 10 camels so that will take her all night long and every last inch of strength she has? Wow.
The woman who knows this is something about her. And it even says here, which I really love, and this, a lot of people graze over this. It says she had finished giving him a drink. So he had drank all he wanted. And she says, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. So that means not just a drink, but until they're all full and their humps are full. And then it says, so she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well water. So what that tells me is she started in that exact second watering the camels with what was left over in there. And then went more, the text goes out of its way to make that point that she emptied what was there. She immediately started watering them before she even got to that first official camel watering trip. The first trip was for the servant. Then she gave she just immediately jumps in and runs to the well to draw water. She draws for the camel and he watches her in silence and to learn, for he had to learn without interfering with her, whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. She was being tested. And when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms. And the gold ring went in her nose. And gold checkers, and please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? So are you open to this, right? That's like knocking at the door, right? Is there room for us? And she says who she is. And then she says, we have plenty of all the things that would be for your shelter, for you to sleep here. And so then the man bows his head, and the first thing he does is he worships the Lord. He doesn't be, well done me, well done you, well done. He worships God. Right. I just love that. The first thing he did.
He sees it's, I immediately got the picture of like Elizabeth and Mary when they're both meet each other and the babies leap in each other's wombs. It's like, he was like, it wasn't about either one of their missions or anything. It was all about who he was and that he had heard him, that he had fulfilled it. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of questions. I'm going back and forth trying to look at some of y'all's questions as I can, but you watch me on video, you're going to see me looking like I am having some, I don't know, spasms, but I'm trying to read all the things. Well, a couple of people have asked, well, did they know, and was he betrothed? I don't think so. I don't think they were betrothed. I don't think that they knew, because he asked, who are you? Whose daughter are you? So she wouldn't have known. She didn't know who he was. She didn't. This is a whole, that Middle Eastern hospitality we talked about when I was telling you about Marty Solomon, when he went in and these Muslims see him from, over like a quarter of a mile away, and they send their 4 and 5-year-olds to run out there and greet them. And then they basically bake all the bread they have and give them all the food, and they would lay their lives down for these people. And they're Muslim, and these people are Jews and Christians, and they're coming in and they're saying, it doesn't matter. It's a hospitality issue. And now we're in covenant, and I would lay my life down for you. That's happening. That's the kind of hospitality that we don't understand.
No, it's true. And actually, I'll tell you this quick little story. I was in Israel one time. We were with a group of people, a bunch of people, and we went to a holy site that was owned by Muslims, Arabs. I don't know if whether they're Muslim. I know they're Arab, but I think they were. But we went and looked at the holy site, and then we had to leave through the gift shop, and no one bought anything. and we were just kind of in a rush to leave. It wasn't like anyone was like against them. It's just that we had to run off at our bus and go somewhere. This is, I think, my first trip to Israel, because it was a tour bus, and that was the only tour I ever did. Every time I went, I was not on a tour after that. But what happened was, as we were pulling out, one of the guys that worked in the gift shop ran out, and he says, wait, 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 wait. And he says, stop. And we're like, and we stopped and opened the door, and he goes, hold on, please wait. I have something for you. Please wait. And he went in, and he came out with like 2 or 3 other guys holding these big silver platters of this honeyed cheese flaky dessert that was platters of it. I mean, there was 30 of us, and they came out with platters and platters of this stuff. And he says, hey, don't believe that we all are against you, because we are not. Please come. And we bought nothing there. We gave them no money. He said, come and eat. So everybody started getting off the bus and started eating this delicious dessert, laughing and talking. And everyone comes back on the bus licking their fingers. They were like, well, that was refreshing, you know? And that's that hospitality that took over. Whatever that was, where people came and saw and left, it became more than that. It was really amazing.
So beautiful. I hope that in the stories we're telling you, you get a picture. You just get this beautiful picture. And doing some, I mean, I am honest. Sometimes I've had people knock on my door and I've hidden, like, I don't want them to know I'm home, let alone jump out and, you know, or when I was struggling and like, oh, I don't know if I barely can feed my family. I couldn't like feed a bunch of people. I'll tell you a quick story of hospitality. When we were down, I was ministering at a little Pentecostal Church of God down by the border, South Arizona, like so close to the border that border patrols came through, and like we were there for a week, and this little pastor would drive all over this Indian reservation. He'd go all through this Indian reservation to pick people up to pick these people up and bring them every night that I was there teaching. Every night he'd bring these people, and he would drive for hours picking people up and bring them in. What was my point? Oh, on the last day, they were like, well, we're going to have this thing with you. We want to have this beautiful, like, we want to feed you. We want to like celebrate that you're leaving and that you've given so much to us. And so we were really happy. We get out, we walk in. And at the time I had a girl who was traveling with me and acting kind of as a nanny for Shelby. And we go into the kitchen, and I just was peeking like, oh, what are you guys making? I'm excited. It was like this tiny little church, and they had a little tiny kitchen. And I think they may have had a pot of beans and rice, and that was it. Like, they didn't have hardly anything. And they were embarrassed. And so what we came back in, and I'm going to tell you, I used our rent money to make this trip to be with these people. So not only did we didn't get paid to be there, but we had no money. And we ended up going in and making all the food that was inside of our motorhome. I had like a little Class A motorhome, or Class C, those little ones with a little cab on the front. Made it all the food that we could make, and then took it to this little Indian reservation to these people. And then we had the best food. I mean, and only ourselves and the pastor's wife knew that they didn't have any food, and nobody else was bringing food. They didn't know, or we don't know what happened, but we ate everything. And so now we have no food left, and we have no money. And we had to stop at one little reservation before we got home. And we got to that little reservation. It was a casino reservation. So that little church, that little group of indigenous people had, they had a little money because they were casino. They got casino money. So I think we got a little bit of money. So we had enough money to get gas to get home, and found out the U-joint in our trailer our thing had broken. So it was enough to fix the U-joint. God had literally held it together. That's a whole nother story, but held it together to get to my dad's house, fixed it. We got home, slept the night. I'm like, Father, you have to make provision for us to pay rent, and we have no groceries. We were supposed to go that next night to another little church outside of Fresno. And I went there. We went to this little church and ministered there. When we walked in the doors, there was two full rows of the church packed full of groceries. And I was walked in, and I started crying because I thought, oh, they're an outward focused church. I love this. They're ministering to their community. And I looked, and it was like Tylenol, not like acetaminophen. And it was like Tide, not like great, it was all brand names. It wasn't like, everything was like the best. and that sounds silly, but when you're like on super tight income and you're only buying like non-name brand things, you notice these little things. So I was just so blessed from this family. I was like, oh, you guys, what a beautiful ministry you have. And they said, oh no, the Lord told us to have a grocery shower for you. So these are all for you. And we have a full refrigerator full. We have meat packed in the freezer. I mean, it was pressed down, shaken together. My poor little girl at the time, Shelby's 29 now, and she was, I don't know, 7 or 9. And she's in the back seat with like food, everything pushed all on her in our little like, Ford Escort. And it was like, we had to leave some of it because we couldn't take it all. We had so much food. The money we got we had plenty of money to make. We had got the money back. We actually had a little bit more money from that casino Indians. And then I have to be careful, indigenous peoples. And we have all that. And we had enough money to pay our rent. We had all because we had the heart of hospitality. We were willing to give it all away.
Wow.
And that's the heart of hospitality. Are you willing to give it all away? And you know what? That goes right into servant leadership. He was looking for, like you said, she already had something. When she came out, she had water. She gave some to him. So this is stuff she'd already gone and worked for. And then she said she started working right away.
Yeah.
That's servant leadership, guys.
Yeah.
You may not have a title, but you're leading in your homes. You might be leading in ministries. I believe he's calling women out, to women who are ready to start right now, right where you're at, with whatever's in your hands, to pour it out, to minister to the people around you, and minister to whatever their needs are with all you have, trusting that he will bring provision to replace what you've lost.
Oh, what a good story. I love that story.
So good.
I'm so glad.
Hey, Brenda, we know you can't go live with us, but I see you snuck in. We love you.
Oh, we love you.
Oh. Love you, sister. Yeah, such a good. So he takes him. I love he takes him. We're introduced to Laban. We get to see Laban. We get to see him. Brenda shouts out she loves us too. Over in the comments.
No,
we get introduced to him, right? We get to introduce to this brother who we're going to meet later.
Yep.
And I like that we're introduced to him, and he's not sketchy guy in this story.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because he says, so his brother was Laban, right? So he runs toward this man. It's interesting, they called the servant just the man, right? So they're downgrading his importance in that moment. Now it's about Laban, right? That he ran forward and toward the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man. So she told the story. And behold, he was standing by the camels. And he says, come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? Now, we do know that Laban is actually motivated by possessions, right? And he hears the story and he sees the bracelets, right? He sees the possessions. And you see, he's like, does the father use whatever he uses to get there, where and how and when, right? And so he wasn't sketchy. You're right. He was very specifically, yeah, I saw that. Yes, so you must be blessed. That's how he measures blessed, apparently. And he says, why do you stand outside? Why didn't you just come in? Why are you out there? For I have prepared a house and a place for the camels. So the man comes to the house. He unharnesses the camels. So he knows he'll be staying there, or he wouldn't have unharnessed them. So there's something that he knows. He gives straw and fodder to the camels, and there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. So servant. Then food was set before him to eat. So he comes in, he gets ready to eat, right? But he says, I won't eat until you hear what I have to say. So this is where he's saying, hey, no one's going to owe anybody anything here. Like in terms of a covenant, because eating with people is a covenant in the ancient Near East. So it's symbolic of, I'm not going to put you in a covenant by obligation. I'm going to come be upfront. I'm not going to like dangle parking spaces and a Cinderella play and hope you love God because that was fun at a church. And I'm not insulting your church if they've done that. But what I'm saying is, this isn't seeker sensitive. We're just hoping that one person's going to get one. This was like the authentic thing, I think. But he says,
Oh my God, you have to stop. You have to stop there. Okay, we're just gonna do it, and we love all of you. Please don't be offended. But seriously, I mean, I have pastored churches, and I'm like, you guys, we have to stop with the gimmicks. Like we have to stop with the gimmicks. He said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. Like, you should see the hyperlink right here. If he's lifted up,
yeah,
people are going to say, this is different. You must, because that's what he says. He says on here, like, yep, that's God, and you should, yep, I heard all you said. That's for sure. That's Adonai. Yeah, take her. Here you go. Bye. What? But they did go ask her. They did go ask her, which I'll let you keep finishing. But I had to stop with that, because how many of us in ministries, I'm going to tell you, I am tempted in the Ruta Cafe to, oh, well, we should do this, and we should do this, and then this, and then he's like, stop it.
Yeah. It's almost like we're bragging about.
Tell him who I am. Just tell him who I am.
Right. It's like the commandments speak for themselves. They create
the blood of the lamb, the word of our testimony. Here's what's going on. The covenants. These are the covenants, and I'm going to talk about the covenants. And I love he's saying, nope, I'm not going to eat with you and make some superficial covenant with you. Right. I'm not, or not superficial, but based on something you've seen, because you've seen gold and flashy stuff. No. That's not what the story is here.
Right.
Let me tell you the testimony of let's give Adonai the glory for this first.
And let me then getting into.
Yes.
Or you owe me something. Because in the East, if you go in and say, I like that painting in Japan, they have to give it to you. So it's like, well, we could put this false expectation. Well, now that we've had a meal together and it's understood that obviously we're going to do something, right? He's like, nope, let me say it first before we eat this covenant meal. And if we're in agreement, and that was very specific. He's testing her, and he's testing her system. Will her system let her go? Right? Is she trapped in the system, or will she come? Will she come out of them to be separate? So that, I think that's specific, that it says that. And he says, speak on. So he's like, yep, what's your agenda? And he says, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. Flocks, herds, silver, gold, male servants, female servants, camels, donkeys. So he's listing all the possessions. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. So he does know that Laban likes possessions. You can just tell. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife from my son, from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell. And it's interesting, he says, in whose land, that they were kind of the owners of the land, but they were not the real owners, right?
Right.
But you shall go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife for my son. So I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me. So he's telling the story in detail. Now, the Bible isn't wordy unless it wants to be, right? So he's telling him, I said to my master, well, what if the woman won't follow me? And he said, the Lord before whom I have walked will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take away from my son from my clan and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you are free from my oath. So he says, it's nothing to me as we eat this meal if you don't let her go. I'm just the messenger. This is your call. Right. So he's passing the responsibility onto them to make their choice without feeling guilty about him. Interesting, right? She's already got gifts for watering the camels. Laban could take those and keep them. Right. So he says, I came today to the spring and said, oh Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I'm standing by the spring of the water. Let the virgin. Okay. So he tells the story very specifically. He keeps telling this story. And before I'd even finished speaking, behold. So whenever they say behold, it's like, stop, everybody, right? Rebecca comes out with her ready with water on her shoulder, because she was doing her tasks diligently at the time. That was the wisest time to do that task. And she goes down to the spring and she draws the water. And I said, let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder. See this? From her shoulder. And there's a thing about the father with the lamb on his shoulder. You know what I mean? There's something about that. This is a gesture of, right? And so I drank, she says, drink, I will give your camels water also. And then she waters my camels. And I said to her, whose daughter are you? And she tells me that, she's related. She's part of Abraham's household that he left. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord. So I let him know this. It's very specific. The God of my master Abraham has led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now, any man, Laban, would be thrilled with this offer. So then if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me. If not, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. So he's really putting it in his court. And of course, what do they say? The thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you good or bad. Behold, Rachel is before you. Take her and go and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. So Laban's getting a good deal. His daughter's marrying into this royal family.
Yeah, it's actually his sister. So it's
sister. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bethuel is standing there with him, but Laban is speaking. Laban's already standing up, so Bethuel is aging. So Laban's standing in as the head of this home because he is the firstborn, right? He's talking, and we know that.
Yeah,
all the possessions are his.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would know about Abraham. Like I mean, this is like their great uncle. They're like, oh yeah, he left. Now remember, they're all still, this is the inheritance, the things that Abraham walked away from because he was the firstborn and he gave it to his brother. Like he walked away from all this, and now, I mean, this is a whole nother dimension. We have to think of this as, now here we have Abraham who's sending a servant to I mean, these are the people who've actually taken over his inheritance because he walked away from it, trusting God's inheritance. God said, nope, leave your people, which was unheard of. He left and did all that. We've talked about that already weeks ago. But here we see, they would have known who he was. They're like, oh, and they would have heard the story, like what's happening, like what God is prospering, like look at these amazing things. So like you said, they won the lottery. They won the lottery today and this is bringing those families back together as well. We can look at this as a place of reconciliation, because where there might have been, where Abraham had left and what he's pulling in and reconciling now back to that family. So it's kind of beautiful. That's another side of that.
Wow. Yeah.
One of the girls says, Robin, in covenant marriages, the minute that the servant gave the bracelets and nose ring and she veiled herself, she was betrothed. Is that correct?
Well, this is interesting. And that is such a good question. That is important for this next paragraph. So well asked, because what happens is he gave her the gesture of, you can keep it either way. This is to me about free will, because the next paragraph says that let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. So her brother says that. When Abraham's servant heard these words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. So he made himself low. The servant brings out the jewelry of silver, gold, garments, and he gives them to Rebekah. So more gifts. Okay. But then he also gave to her brother and her mother costly ornaments. So yes, you're seeing that. But then he says, and he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, send away to my master. Now, I think they're betrothed because there was a second round of gift giving to the family. So that would mark the betrothal from my perspective. But there is a suggestion of an offer in the bracelets and the nose ring. But then it says, and then the mother and her brother and mother say, hey, let her stay with us for a while, just 10 more days. After that, she may go. 10 days, very to me, is significant of the lost people, the dispersed people, right? Let her stay as a lost person for 10 more days. Where I feel like that's not what they're saying, but there's a hint of that in the language, but they're not saying that. That's what I'm reading. But they're saying, oh, we can't let go of her that quickly. Like, can she stay here a little longer? To me, though, it's significant that it's 10. And so, and he says, don't delay me, because the Lord has spoken. There's no reason to delay. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they say, well, let's ask her. Let's let her make that decision. This is to me that indication of free will. And this is where she acts like a betrothed person. They call Rebecca and they say to her, will you go to this man? And she says, yes. She's saying, I am betrothed. That's what I think she's saying. I've already accepted the gifts. So they sent away Rebecca, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rebecca and said to her, our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gates of those who hate him. So they rose, they rode the camels, followed the man, and they went away. So that to me is like, there was an offer, and then there was like a stamp of approval with that second round of gifts after the covenant meal, right? Or after the agreement, and then they have the covenant meal, and then they want to but to me, the metaphor there is, but you know what? Hang back a bit. You don't need to rush into this. But once that door is being knocked at, open the door. Don't wait until, well, I have this job 6 more months. I'll answer and fall in love with Yeshua then. That would be complicated. Nope, now.
That's what the children of Israel were being warned against. Like they kept going, oh, if we were only back in Egypt. Remember when we were in Egypt? And they kept like wanting to like keep a toe in Egypt. And he's like, no, you need to release all of it and just go. Like release it and go.
Like now, not later, right?
Right. Yeah. And Marcia says she did everything immediately. You're right, Marcia. Absolutely. Yeah.
She did everything right away. And she understood that they wanted a little more time with her. But I think she's being tested further, because then it talks about, then it goes in, and it immediately she's on her way. And then the scene immediately changes. Like the sentences, we see it separated on the way we're reading it, but really this was, then Rebecca and her young woman arose and rode the camel and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebecca and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from, so at the same time, these are all happening at the same time. And he's dwelling in the Negev, that's where I stay. And Isaac went out into the field to meditate toward evening. So toward evening, when it's cooler, he goes out into the desert. And so, and he's to listen. So a lot of people look at meditation as whatever it is, but it's really listening. It's taking time to wait and hear. So to me, that's an expectation, because then when it talks about he lifts his eyes, which I talk about this all the time, but he lifts his eyes, which means he expects to see his destiny coming closer. And behold, the camels are coming. So Rebecca had watered them.
Right.
Go ahead.
And he says he was visiting at Beer Lahai Roy, which is to see, like it's to see the vision, right? The name of, let me go back. I think I looked that word up, and it means like to see the vision.
Right, because with expectation, right? Like he's going to have eyes to see.
Yes, and why did he have eyes to see? Because he was meditating, because he was listening. Shema, that's the reason we're told to Shema. And then so we can Shamar. He was Shemaing, he was listening, he was meditating, he was spending time walking, being with the Holy One. And then he was given eyes to see his destiny. Sisters, there's a lot of you. One of the biggest questions we get is, I don't know what he's called me to do. I don't know what my destiny is. Are you spending time in the cool of the evening? Are you spending time with the Spirit? Are you spending time listening to the Holy One speak to your heart, speak to your life, reveal your destiny to you? Because would you even see it if you saw it coming? Would you see it? Would your head be so down doing all the things and stressing and, going on? Would you be? And he was grieving. He was in a process of grieving the death of his mother, but he lifted his head. We're going to see this happening. We're going to see this happening with the children of Israel when they have to lift and look. Lift your head and look. It's beautiful. This is such a beautiful story.
It is, but if we get into the meat of it, it's so cool, and it relates to us. And it's interesting because, Abraham lifted his eyes on the third day and saw that hope was going to be realized. So no matter what happened to Isaac, through his hand or not, that through his loins would be made a nation. And so then it says, what's interesting, it says that he was meditating, he lifts up his eyes, and the camels were coming. And that's kind of our life, right? And then Rebecca lifts her eyes.
Yes.
And then she sees him. So everybody had the expectation of a realized destiny and the hope that they were hoping for. The hope was being realized. And so she lifts up her eyes when she sees Isaac. She dismounts from the camel and says to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? So he was coming toward them. And the servant says, it's my master. So she takes her veil and covers herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah's mother, took Rebekah, she became his wife, and he loved her, and he was comforted at his mother's death. So where one destiny ended and was a legacy, a new destiny was starting, and it was comforting. And so it's this story just gets me every time.
It's so beautiful. And I have other translations will say she fell off the camel, that when she lifted her eyes and she saw Isaac, and then she fell off the camel. And I always giggle when I see that, when I've seen that in other translations. So I'm thinking, can you imagine? Hey, remember when Grandma Rachel, remember when she fell off the camel when she met Grandpa? Remember when she saw him and he was so hot that she fell off the camel? Like, remember when that happened? It's like, no, I don't know. I'll have to look at the original Hebrew. I'm reading out of Tree of Life version, and they say she fell off the camel. Yours says dismounted. I'm like, I don't know, but it makes me giggle to think that she saw him and was just like, boo, fell off the camel.
Like when you should see what I had to do to get your father. My goodness, I rode on camels, I watered, and
and
it might mean that the text is saying she stopped traveling and set roots.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
So it might just be that she got off that thing and didn't just stay on that camel that she had watered, because now there was a new role for her to take on, and she isn't the traveler. She's the married, stable person in one place.
Yeah. But she did all that before she knew it was him. She didn't know it was him yet.
She lifted her eyes, so her expectation was, that the answer would be yes, that's your target.
Yeah.
And she's like, gotcha. So why would she even ask, right? And so one quick thing in the next verse where it says that Abraham took another wife, Keturah, a lot of people believe that's Hagar. The sages mostly believe that. Just something to mention.
That Keturah was also Hagar?
Yes, that was what they called her. They changed her name. She had a conversion or whatever.
I have heard the same thing. Like, I have heard the same thing. And it's interesting to me when he gets remarried is that she said he also sends all her sons away so that they're not in the same vicinity as Isaac. She sends them away. It says he gets married, and then he sent the new sons away from Isaac. It says he sent those sons away from Isaac. He blesses them, gives them stuff, but he sends them away because he doesn't want to have another Ishmael shenanigan. However, when he dies, Ishmael is there. Doesn't say he came from afar. Like, Ishmael is there. So he's there, and he helps to bury Abraham. But I've heard the same thing. I know that it's interesting that she's brought up and the Ishmael's brought up in here, because we're talking about they were living at that Lahai Roy, Bear Lahai Roy. That's the same a well that Hagar saw. It's called the Well of Vision.
Yep.
Sometimes we have to spend time at that well to get our vision. And remember what happened, that all of a sudden she lifted her eyes up and she saw the well when Ishmael was, dying under the tree. We talked about this last week. He's dying under this bush in the desert, and she looks up and she sees a well, and she's able to then get water from this well. And this is the same place. If you look it up, go through and do the thing. I briefly went through, but this is the same. The Lahai Roy, it's the same well that Hagar saw, and that's what's believed. It's believed was the name of it. It's the Well of the Vision, and this is a place where they're staying. They went back to that place, so that's why we think that the Keturah was actually Hagar, because that she had stayed around that area.
Yeah, and he didn't just discard her after Sarah. He still did, because it's interesting, because God loves Ishmael too. And Abraham loved Ishmael too. And to me, I personally, from an attachment perspective, see that message a little bit differently than most people, where it's like this. The circumcision happened for Isaac, but Ishmael had already been born. So he was not born of the covenant. Didn't mean it wasn't for him, because he could get circumcised. But the point being, Isaac was the younger. and the one of the child of the covenant, of the promise, right? But that doesn't mean, but to me, the message can be, even if you're born first and not through the seed of covenant, and the brother is younger and he's of the royal leadership, that doesn't mean you're not going to have princes. And it doesn't mean that you can't come into this covenant. It means this is for everybody. Like, I see that message as there's no such thing as missing out. No FOMO here. It's for everybody. You can be, you can be in the, you're there. It's offered to you. So I think like Sarah, yeah, she sent Hagar away, and that child, the father swoops in and saves that child for a reason. And so I don't know. And then Esau goes to Uncle Ishmael, and they form an alliance, and then you start seeing where things really start going south, even more.
Right.
But it's interesting.
It is interesting. We could finalize this out. We hop over to John 4:3 and 4 about the woman at the well. I mean, we're talking about the same woman vision. Now this woman is at Jacob's well. Where is this well at? Where is Jacob's well at? Is this the same well? Probably not, but this is one of the things you can ask and look up. That was my question today, this morning. I'm like, where is this well? Where is this Jacob's well? Is it close? Is it the same? Jacob would have come back to it because this would have been where his mother and father lived, and he stayed in the tents and studied in the tents. We'll talk about that next week. But we have this woman who is at the well, and we have Yeshua coming.
And he had left Judea and departed again for Galilee. So when he leaves Judah, he's saying he left Judah and Benjamin and is heading toward the lost sheep.
Yes.
So he had to pass through Samaria. He comes to the town of Samaria, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Joseph's well is there. So Yeshua, wearied as he was from his journey, is sitting by the well about the 6th hour. Oh, there's so much there. We don't even have time. But this Samaritan woman comes down. One of the lost sheep comes down. Give me a drink. And it says, how are you? That is a Jew, or because he's saying, give me a drink. And she's like, you're a Jew asking a Samaritan woman for water? And because these were the shunned people, the ones that the writ stood against them, right? In the divorce book, right? And he says, and Jesus says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. So if you really knew who I was, person who can only see that that identifies as a shunned person, rather as you're encountering a moment, an event of redemption. If you knew who I was, you'd be asking me for a drink. But what he's saying is, will you give yourself to me, right? Because she's at the well. So then she says, he would have given you living water. And the woman says to him, sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and this well is deep. Where do you get that living water? So what you don't even have a pail. Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as his sons did in his livestock. So she is saying, yes, we were originally part of this group, but now we're shunned. Nothing could be more clear there, right? But he says to her, everyone who drinks of this water is going to be thirsty again. Jacob isn't your savior. He's part of your legacy, of the legacy of your birthright, right? But whoever drinks the water I will give will never be thirsty again. The water I will give will become in him a spring of the water welling up to eternal life. So what he's saying is, let me give you water. You're not shunned. I'm here. I was here at the foundation of the world, and I'll be here in Revelation. I'll be from the beginning to the end. I've always been there. I bookend redemption. But here I am at the well, and we're going to go back and forth about who's watering who. You know what I mean? And so, yes, bring me water, Rebecca, and I'm going to drink it. And then on the camels that you watered, I'm going to take you to your destiny. And this is that free will, free agency connection that we have with the Father, where we are back and forth, wrestling with him and ourselves to figure out how to get the heck out of Egypt.
Hey, man, that's so good. That's really good. I know a lot of you guys are going to re-listen to this over and over. I'm laughing at some of the comments in a good way. that there's some debates going on here about, well, it's not about how people look, and you're absolutely right, because how many of you guys have known, the guy who's, Mr. Buff and everything else, but he's just a jerk, and you don't want to, you want someone honest and who's loving and things. So when I'm saying that she fell off the camel because she saw him and was like, woo, I mean, come on, I'm kidding. But am I? Because I think that they had beautiful babies, because Sarai was hot at 90. Like, she got the attention of people. It was like, whoa, she's really, and we'll see Rachel being the same thing. Like, she was beautiful. And we're told that she's really beautiful. We're told that David was very handsome. Joseph was super handsome. Yeah. Like, they have some beautiful babies in this. They have some things that are physically attractive, as well as the heart and the hospitality of it. I think that the beauty probably shines of their insides shine out.
And I heard one person tell me one time, and I never forgot it. She said, people that are physically attractive with idealized features of that culture at that time are made that way for a reason. And they will walk into that reason. They will figure that out. As long as they're not charming and deceptive, and they praise the Lord, doesn't matter what you look like. But people that are a shiny object that stand out, there's a reason, and it should be used for the glory of God. Right. And
exactly.
Just like music should be used for the glory of God, So yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah. So, and I love that you came back on that. And I don't think that she's like fell off the camel. I just thought it was funny when I was reading it. This is me doing my own little midrash with myself, laughing, thinking, can I imagine that how my kids will tell stories, or my granddaughters will tell story how Papa and Yaya met each other. And I was thinking what are their fun stories? My favorite part about that story, though, is that they both were spending time listening. And as soon as they looked up, as soon as they changed the position and they changed their head, they're looking down because they're traveling, you're tired, you're grieving, he was grieving. But instead they stopped in the midst of their pain, in the midst of their exhaustion, in the midst of all those things. They looked up and they saw their destiny. And they embraced their destiny instantly. And I love that, especially we see her instantly starting things, instantly she does things, instantly she proclaims herself by wrapping herself back up, instantly these things are happening immediately. And so much is happening in our world right now that we can get distracted looking down or exhausted or with grief. So much is happening. Can I just encourage you to look up? Spend some time with the creator of your soul, and then look up and let him restore your vision of your destiny.
Amen. The word look up, that word lifted up their eyes, is actually the same word used for when the water rose and lifted the ark. That's the same word, with the vessel of salvation. That's a vessel of salvation, with the legacy and destiny of the occupants inside. That water was lifted and it sustained the ark, right? And the Father sent that water to rise and protect them. And so it's an interesting word. And you're right. It's about destiny. It's about future. It's about redemption. And that's just a whole cool concept in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today. Thanks for pinch hitting. Brenda, we're sending you our love. I think she already hopped off again. She had to she's at the hospital with Jeff, but we just love you. And if you've loved this today, would you just tag a few friends just so that they don't miss it? I think this is one of those ones you'll want to listen to a couple of times. Go into the comments on Facebook, tag it a couple times. You can go into, also, if you're not, they're like, I don't have time to read. I don't know if you guys know, if you go to therootedcafe.com, KAFE, cafe.com, then /the-portion. If you go in there and scroll down, you'll see Misty has someone every week reading the portion. So you have all different people coming from our team, different ladies on here. They're actually reading the portion to you. So they're reading that portion. I think this week it is Misty, and she's you're sitting there listening to one of us read the portion to you. So maybe you could just put it in your ears. You can download it and you can kind of listen, but you can do that from your phone or from anywhere. I think that's kind of fun. And I promise to work on this store, so you can go jump into some stuff. Links to Robin's books used to be in our store, but they'll be back on this today or Sunday. We'll get it all set up. So lots of questions over here on in the chat and things happening on Facebook, but we're gonna let y'all go in the recording. So we don't drag this along for you. We love you and mean it. And for those of you who are on Facebook and want to hang out with us in the after party, it is not too late. Just go up and click that link. I'll post it again here in the chat so you can jump in. And we're going to hang out for just a few minutes chatting about this not being recorded. Love you guys.